You're being controlled by your feelings. Every decision you make, every action you take, every opportunity you miss is being dictated by how you feel in that moment. And those feelings are lying to you. They're telling you that you're too tired to work out, too anxious to make the call, too uncertain to start the project, too hurt to have a conversation, too comfortable to change. And you're listening to them like they're telling you the truth. But here's what you need to understand. Your feelings are not facts. They're just chemical reactions in your brain that have no bearing on what you're actually capable of doing. The most successful people in the world have learned to execute regardless of how they feel. They've trained their minds to separate emotion from action, to feel the fear and do it anyway, to feel the exhaustion and show up anyway, to feel the doubt and move forward anyway. This is not about becoming emotionless or cold. This is not about suppressing your humanity or turning into a robot. This is about developing the ability to acknowledge what you feel without letting those feelings control what you do. It's about creating a gap between stimulus and response where you have the power to choose your actions based on your goals, not your moods. Right now, you're a slave to your emotional state. When you feel motivated, you work. When you feel tired, you rest. When you feel confident, you take action. When you feel afraid, you retreat. Your entire life is being run by a system that changes every few hours based on your sleep, your blood sugar, your stress levels, and 1,000 other variables you can't control. And you wonder why your results are inconsistent. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is filled with actions that need to be taken regardless of how you feel about taking them. The workout that needs to happen when you feel exhausted. The difficult conversation that needs to happen when you feel anxious. The creative work that needs to happen when you feel uninspired. The discipline that needs to happen when you feel like quitting. Your feelings will always vote against these actions, but your future depends on taking them anyway. I'm going to show you how to train your mind to decouple emotion from execution, how to feel everything without being controlled by anything, how to acknowledge your feelings while still doing what needs to be done, how to become someone who executes with mechanical precision regardless of their emotional weather. This is the skill that separates people who achieve their goals from people who just have good intentions. Are you ready to stop being controlled by your feelings? Are you ready to learn how to execute when every emotion is screaming at you to stop? Then let's begin the most important training you will ever undertake. The training that turns you from someone who acts when they feel like it into someone who acts because they decided to. Let's build a mind that feels nothing and executes everything. Chapter 1. Your feelings are not instructions. You treat your feelings like they're giving you orders. You feel tired, so you interpret that as an instruction to rest. You feel unmotivated, so you interpret that as an instruction to wait. You feel anxious, so you interpret that as an instruction to avoid. But your feelings are not instructions. They're just information. And most of the time, that information is outdated, inaccurate, or irrelevant to what you're trying to accomplish. Your emotional system was designed for a different world. A world where feeling fear meant there was a predator nearby. A world where feeling tired meant you were actually depleted, not just bored. A world where immediate comfort was necessary for survival. But you don't live in that world anymore. You live in a world where the things you fear are usually just uncomfortable, not dangerous. Where the tiredness you feel is often mental, not physical. Where comfort is abundant and discipline is rare. Your feelings are giving you advice based on ancient programming that doesn't apply to your modern goals. They're trying to keep you safe and comfortable. They're trying to conserve your energy. They're trying to protect you from rejection and failure. And in doing so, they're keeping you exactly where you are, because growth requires you to be unsafe, uncomfortable, and willing to fail. Your feelings will never vote for that. Think about the last time you had an important task to do, but you didn't feel like it. What was that feeling actually telling you? It was telling you that doing the task would be uncomfortable, that you'd have to focus, that you have to deal with uncertainty or difficulty. All of that is true, but none of it means you shouldn't do the task. It just means the task requires effort, and your emotional system, designed to conserve energy, is flagging that effort as something to avoid. But you listen to that feeling like it was a fact. Like, I don't feel like it meant I can't do it or I shouldn't do it. And so you didn't do it. You let your feelings make the decision. And then you wondered why you're not making progress toward your goals. It's because you're taking instructions from a system that's optimized for comfort, not achievement. Highly successful people have learned to recognize feelings as data, not directives. They feel the resistance. They acknowledge the discomfort. They notice the fear or the exhaustion or the doubt. But then they ask themselves a different question. What needs to be done regardless of how I feel? And they do that. They override the feeling with decision. They execute the plan despite the emotion. This is not about ignoring your feelings completely. Some feelings are important signals. Physical pain that indicates injury. Exhaustion that indicates genuine depletion. Anxiety that indicates real danger. These deserve attention. But most of your feelings are not in this category. Most of them are just your brain's way of saying, this will require effort, and I'd rather you didn't. You need to develop the ability to sort your feelings into two categories. Feelings that deserve action and feelings that deserve acknowledgement only. The first category is small. Genuine pain, genuine exhaustion from overwork, genuine signals of danger. The second category is huge. Every I don't feel like it. Every I'm not in the mood. Every I'll do it when I feel more motivated. Every I'm too anxious. Every I'm too tired even though I just woke up. These are not instructions. These are just your comfort-seeking brain trying to keep you from growing. When you feel something in that second category, practice a simple response. I feel this, and I'm doing it anyway. Not, I feel this, so I won't do it. Not, I need to get rid of this feeling before I can act. Just, I feel this, and I'm doing it anyway. This acknowledgement without compliance is the foundation of emotional regulation and consistent execution. Start with small things. You feel like staying in bed. Acknowledge it. I feel like staying in bed. I'm getting up anyway. You feel like skipping your workout. Acknowledge it. I feel like skipping. I'm going anyway. You feel like eating the junk food. Acknowledge it. I feel like eating this. I'm choosing the healthy option anyway. Each time you do this, you're training your brain that feelings are not instructions. They're just sensations that you can feel while doing the opposite of what they suggest. This training is uncomfortable at first. Your brain will protest. It will turn up the volume on the feeling, trying to get you to comply. It will make you feel like you're fighting yourself. But that discomfort is the price of developing self-control. That internal tension is you building the muscle that will allow you to execute regardless of emotional state. Over time, something interesting happens. The feelings don't disappear. You'll still feel tired or unmotivated or anxious, but they'll lose their power over you. They'll become like background noise that you notice but don't react to. You'll be able to feel exhausted and still work out. Feel anxious and still make the call. Feel unmotivated and still execute your plan. This is freedom, not the absence of difficult feelings, but the ability to act independently of them. The people you admire who seem to execute with machine-like consistency aren't doing it because they always feel great. They're doing it because they've trained themselves to not need to feel great to take action. They've decoupled their emotional state from their behavior. And that decoupling is what makes them unstoppable. Stop treating your feelings like instructions. Start treating them like weather. You don't cancel your day because it's raining. You just acknowledge that it's raining and do what needs to be done anyway. Apply that same logic to your internal weather. Feel whatever you feel. Then do what needs to be done anyway. This is how you build a life based on decisions instead of moods. Chapter 2. The gap between feeling and action is where power lies. There's a space between the moment you feel something and the moment you act on it. For most people, this space is microscopic. They feel something and immediately act on it without even realizing there was a choice. They feel angry and they lash out. They feel tempted and they indulge. They feel resistant and they quit. The feeling and the action are so tightly coupled that they seem like one thing, but they're not one thing. They're two things. And the space between them is where all your power lives. That space is where you can choose, where you can decide whether this feeling deserves to drive your behavior or whether you're going to act according to your values instead. That space is where self-control, discipline, and character are built. And right now, that space in your life is probably too small to be useful. You need to widen that gap. You need to create more distance between feeling and action so you have room to make better choices. This is what emotional regulation actually means. Not controlling what you feel, but controlling what you do about what you feel. Not suppressing the emotion, but decoupling it from automatic behavior. Think about the last time you reacted to something emotionally and regretted it later. Maybe you said something in anger. Maybe you quit something because you felt frustrated. Maybe you indulged in something because you felt stressed. In that moment, the gap between feeling and action was so small that you didn't even realize you were making a choice. The feeling arose and you immediately acted on it. But there was a moment, a brief, barely noticeable moment, where you could have chosen differently, where you could have felt the anger and chosen to respond calmly, where you could have felt the frustration and chosen to persist, where you could have felt the stress and chosen a healthy coping mechanism. You missed that moment because you weren't looking for it, because you've trained yourself to react automatically rather than respond intentionally. Highly effective people have widened that gap. They've created space between stimulus and response where they can evaluate their options. They feel the emotion just as strongly as you do, but between feeling it and acting on it, they pause, they consider, they choose, and usually, they choose the action that serves their long-term goals rather than the action that would make them feel better in the moment. This gap is built through practice. You start by simply noticing the moment between feeling and action. When you feel something strong, anger, fear, temptation, resistance, don't act immediately. Just notice, I'm feeling angry right now. I'm feeling tempted right now. I'm feeling resistant right now. This noticing creates the first bit of space. It breaks the automatic reaction pattern by inserting awareness. Then you expand that space with a pause. Literally pause before acting. Take 3 breaths. Count to 10. Walk away for 5 minutes. This deliberate delay between feeling and action gives you time to think, time to remember your values, time to consider consequences, time to choose a response that you'll be proud of later instead of a reaction you'll regret. In that pause, ask yourself a simple question. What action serves my future, regardless of what I'm feeling right now? Not what action feels good right now. Not what action will make this feeling go away. But what action aligns with who I'm trying to become? This question redirects your focus from your emotional state to your goals. It reminds you that you're not trying to feel good all the time. You're trying to build a good life. The answer to that question becomes your action, regardless of what you're feeling. If the answer is, go to the gym, you go even though you feel tired. If the answer is, have the difficult conversation, you have it even though you feel anxious. If the answer is, stay calm and respond thoughtfully, you do that even though you feel angry. You let your decision override your feeling. This is incredibly difficult at first. Your emotions will fight back. They'll turn up the intensity. They'll try to force you into the automatic reaction pattern. Your anger will become rage. Your anxiety will become panic. Your resistance will become overwhelming aversion. This is your brain's way of saying, pay attention to me, I'm important. But you're teaching it a new lesson. Feelings don't dictate behavior. Each time you successfully widen the gap and choose your response, you're building neurological infrastructure. You're creating new neural pathways that make it easier next time. You're training your brain that there's a space between feeling and action, and that you're in control of what happens in that space. This is real power. The power to choose your actions based on your values instead of your moods. You'll also notice that when you stop immediately acting on your feelings, the feelings often change on their own. The anger subsides. The anxiety lessens. The resistance fades. This teaches you another important lesson. Emotions are temporary. If you just give them space without acting on them, they'll pass. But when you act on them immediately, you reinforce them. You teach your brain that these feelings are urgent and must be acted upon. And that makes them more intense and more frequent. Start practicing this today. Pick one emotion that typically controls your behavior. Maybe it's frustration that makes you quit. Maybe it's anxiety that makes you avoid. Maybe it's anger that makes you lash out. Whatever it is, commit to widening the gap around that specific emotion. When you feel it arise, notice it, pause, ask your question, and choose your response. Do this consistently for a month and watch how that emotion loses its grip on your behavior. The gap between feeling and action is where power lives. It's where you reclaim control over your life from your emotional autopilot. It's where you transform from someone who reacts to everything into someone who responds thoughtfully to what matters. Widen that gap. Own that space. Make your decisions there instead of letting your feelings make them for you. This is how you become someone who executes regardless of emotional state. Chapter 3. Mechanical Execution. Doing without deliberating. You waste an enormous amount of energy deciding whether to do the things you've already decided to do. You've decided to work out every morning, but every morning you relitigate that decision based on how you feel. You decide to work on your important project first thing, but every day you debate whether today is the right day. You've decided to eat healthy, but at every meal you reconsider based on your cravings. This constant redeciding is exhausting, and it's why you fail to follow through. Mechanical execution means you do what you decided to do without consulting your feelings about it. You decided yesterday that you'd work out this morning, so this morning you work out. You don't check in with how you feel. You don't evaluate whether you still want to. You don't reconsider whether it's a good idea. You just execute the decision that was already made, like a machine following its programming. This removes emotional friction that stops most people. They fail not because they make bad decisions, but because they fail to execute good decisions consistently. They let their in-the-moment feelings override their carefully considered plans. They let their present self, who wants comfort, overrule their past self, who wanted achievement. Mechanical execution eliminates this conflict by removing the decision from the moment of execution. Think about the actions in your life that you do mechanically already. You brush your teeth without debating whether you feel like it. You put on your seatbelt without consulting your mood. You lock your door when you leave without reevaluating whether it's necessary. These actions happen automatically because you remove them from the realm of negotiable decisions. They're just things you do, regardless of feelings. You need to move more of your important behaviors into this category. The workout isn't something you decide whether to do each morning. It's just something you do, like brushing your teeth. The important work project isn't something you debate starting each day. It's just what you do from 8 to 10 a.m., like clockwork. The healthy eating isn't something you negotiate meal by meal. It's just how you eat, mechanically, without deliberation. This requires you to make firm decisions in advance, not vague intentions like, I should work out more, but specific commitments like, I work out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 a.m. Not general goals like, I want to work on my business, but concrete plans like, I work on my business from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. every weeknight. These pre-decisions remove the need to decide in the moment. Then, when the moment comes, you don't ask yourself how you feel or whether you want to. You just notice the time and execute the plan. It's 6 a.m. on Monday, then you're working out. That's what happens at 6 a.m. on Monday. It's 9 p.m. on Tuesday, then you're working on your business. That's what happens at 9 p.m. on Tuesday. No deliberation, no consultation with your feelings, just mechanical execution of the pre-made decision. Your feelings will protest this. They'll tell you that you're being too rigid, that you should listen to your body, that you should be more flexible and spontaneous. But this is just your comfort-seeking brain trying to regain control. Mechanical execution doesn't mean never adjusting your plans. It means not adjusting them based on momentary feelings. If you need to change your workout schedule, you do that deliberately, when you're clear-headed, not in the moment when you're tired and looking for an excuse. There's a concept in psychology called implementation intentions. It means that when you decide not just what you'll do, but specifically when and how you'll do it, you're much more likely to follow through. I will exercise this week. I will run for 30 minutes at 6 a.m. in my neighborhood is strong. The more specific and mechanical your plan, the less room there is for feelings to derail it. You also need to eliminate the possibility of negotiation. Don't leave yourself an out. Don't say, I'll work out unless I'm too tired. because you'll always be able to convince yourself you're too tired. Don't say, I'll work on my project unless something comes up, because something can always come up. Say, I will work out at 6 a.m. period. Say, I will work on my project from 9 to 10 p.m. Full stop. No conditions. No escape clauses. Just a mechanical execution of the decision. This might sound harsh or rigid, but consider the alternative. The alternative is what you're doing now. Constant internal debate about whether to do the things you know you should do. Constant emotional friction. Constant failure to follow through, followed by guilt and disappointment. That's not freedom. That's exhausting. Mechanical execution is actually easier because it eliminates the decision fatigue. Start by identifying 3 behaviors that would significantly improve your life if you did them consistently. Maybe it's daily exercise, daily focused work on a key project, and daily healthy eating. For each one, create a specific mechanical plan. Not, I'll exercise when I can, but I exercise for 30 minutes at 6 a.m. Monday through Friday. Not, I'll work on my project when inspired, but I work on my project from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. every weekday. Write these plans down. Put them somewhere visible. Set alarms if needed. Then execute them mechanically. When the time comes, don't check in with your feelings. Don't ask yourself if you feel like it. Just notice the time and execute the plan. Feel whatever you feel, tired, resistant, unmotivated, and do it anyway. Let the doing be separate from the feeling. The first few times will be hard. You'll feel like you're forcing yourself. You'll feel the internal resistance. But each time you execute mechanically despite your feelings, you're building a habit. You're training your brain that these behaviors are non-negotiable. You're creating automaticity that will eventually make them as effortless as brushing your teeth. After a few weeks, something shifts. The behaviors start to feel more automatic. You still might not feel like doing them, but you don't deliberate about them either. You just do them. You successfully move them from a category of decisions you make based on feelings to the category of things you just do mechanically. And that shift is transformative. Mechanical execution is not about becoming emotionless. It's about making your important behaviors independent of your emotions. It's about deciding what needs to be done and then doing it, regardless of how you feel about it. It's about ending the exhausting internal negotiation that prevents follow-through. Stop debating with yourself. Start executing mechanically. This is how you become someone who actually does what they say they're going to do. Chapter 4. Build emotional calluses through repeated exposure. You're emotionally soft. Every discomfort feels like an emergency. Every challenge feels overwhelming. Every bit of friction feels like a reason to stop. And this softness is keeping you trapped in a small, comfortable life where you never have to feel anything difficult. But you can't build anything meaningful without developing emotional calluses, without building up your tolerance for discomfort through repeated exposure. Think about how physical calluses form. You do something that creates friction, lift weights, play guitar, do manual labor. At first, it hurts. Your soft skin blisters and tears. But if you keep doing it, your body adapts. It builds thicker, tougher skin in those specific spots. The calluses don't eliminate the pressure, but they make you capable of handling much more of it without damage. Eventually, you can do things that would have destroyed your soft hands without even noticing the friction. Emotional calluses work the same way. You repeatedly expose yourself to emotional discomfort, fear, anxiety, frustration, rejection, embarrassment. At first, it hurts. Your soft psyche wants to retreat. But if you keep exposing yourself to these emotions without running away, your mind adapts. It builds psychological toughness in those areas. The emotions don't disappear, but you become capable of feeling them and functioning anyway. Right now, you're avoiding the discomfort that would build these calluses. You avoid difficult conversations because they make you anxious. You avoid challenges because they make you feel incompetent. You avoid putting your work out there because rejection would hurt. You avoid pushing your limits because the discomfort feels unbearable. Every avoidance keeps you soft, keeps you vulnerable, keeps you incapable of handling the emotional friction that comes with building anything worthwhile. You need to deliberately expose yourself to the emotions you've been avoiding, not in a way that traumatizes you, but in a way that builds tolerance. Start with manageable doses of discomfort and gradually increase the intensity. Like building physical strength, you start with light weights and progressively overload. You start with small anxieties and progressively expose yourself to bigger ones. If you avoid difficult conversations, start by having small difficult conversations. Express a minor disagreement. Set a small boundary. Ask for something you need. Feel the discomfort of potential conflict, but do it anyway. Each time you do this, you're building a callus against the anxiety of confrontation. The anxiety doesn't disappear, but your tolerance for it increases. Eventually, you can have major difficult conversations without being paralyzed by the anxiety. If you avoid challenges because you fear looking incompetent, start by deliberately doing things you're bad at in public. Take a class where you're a beginner. Try a sport you've never played. Ask questions that might make you look stupid. Feel the embarrassment. Feel the frustration of being incompetent, but stay in it. Don't run. Each exposure builds a callus against the fear of not being immediately good at something. If you avoid rejection, start by deliberately seeking small rejections. Ask for discounts you probably won't get. Pitch ideas that might be turned down. Put your creative work out there, even though most people will ignore it. Feel the sting of rejection. Feel the disappointment. But keep putting yourself out there. Each rejection builds a callus until rejection becomes something you can experience without it destroying your sense of self-worth. The pattern is the same for every emotional discomfort. Repeated exposure in progressively larger doses. You don't eliminate the emotion. You build your capacity to feel it without being controlled by it. You develop the callus that allows you to function in high-friction environments that would tear apart someone with soft, uncallous psychology. This process is uncomfortable by design. If it wasn't uncomfortable, you wouldn't be building the callus. The discomfort is not a sign that something's wrong. It's a sign that adaptation is happening. Your nervous system is learning that this emotion is not an emergency, that you can feel it and survive, that it doesn't need to trigger avoidance or panic. This learning only happens through repeated exposure. There's a concept in psychology called stress inoculation. Small doses of stress, repeatedly experienced and successfully navigated, make you more resilient to larger doses later. It's like a vaccine for your emotional system. You expose yourself to manageable levels of the thing you fear, and in doing so, you build immunity to being overwhelmed by it. This is how elite performers in any field operate. Athletes regularly expose themselves to the discomfort of exhaustion and pain. Entrepreneurs regularly expose themselves to the discomfort of rejection and failure. Artists regularly expose themselves to the discomfort of criticism and obscurity. They're not comfortable with these things, but they've built calluses thick enough that they can continue functioning despite the discomfort. You need to identify your soft spots. Where are you emotionally fragile? What emotions cause you to immediately retreat or shut down? What types of discomfort are you avoiding that's limiting your growth? These are the areas where you need to build calluses through deliberate, repeated exposure. Make a practice of seeking out these discomforts in small doses daily. If you're soft to anxiety, do one thing each day that makes you anxious. If you're soft to frustration, deliberately engage with tasks that frustrate you. If you're soft to rejection, put yourself in one situation each day where you might be rejected. This daily exposure is what builds the callus progressively. Track your tolerance over time. Notice how things that once felt unbearable start to feel manageable. How anxieties that used to stop you dead now just register as background noise. How frustrations that used to make you quit now just feel like part of the work. This is your evidence that the calluses are forming, that you're becoming psychologically tougher. The goal is not to never feel these emotions. The goal is to become someone who can feel them fully and continue executing anyway. Someone whose performance doesn't degrade just because they're feeling fear or frustration or discomfort. Someone who has built enough emotional toughness that the friction of difficult work doesn't tear them apart. This is what feel nothing and execute everything really means. Not that you don't feel, but that your feelings don't determine your actions. That you've built the emotional calluses necessary to keep functioning under pressure. That you can feel everything and still do what needs to be done. Build your calluses. Seek the friction. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. This is how you become unstoppable. Chapter 5. Separate identity from emotion. You believe you're your emotions. When you feel anxious, you think, I am an anxious person. When you feel unmotivated, you think, I am lazy. When you feel overwhelmed, you think, I can't handle this. You fuse your identity with your emotional state. And this fusion is what gives your emotions power over your behavior. If you are your anxiety, then when anxiety says don't do this, you listen, because you're not overriding an emotion. You're overriding yourself. But you are not your emotions. You are the person experiencing emotions. This might sound like a semantic distinction, but it's one of the most important shifts you can make. Your emotions are temporary states that pass through you. They're weather systems in your internal landscape. They come and they go. But you, the observer of these emotions, remain constant. You are not the anxiety. You are the person who sometimes feels anxious. This separation between identity and emotion is what allows highly effective people to function regardless of their emotional state. They don't identify with their feelings. They observe their feelings. They can say, I'm noticing anxiety right now, instead of, I am anxious. They can say, I'm experiencing low motivation, instead of, I am unmotivated. This subtle shift in language reflects a profound shift in perspective. It creates distance between who they are and what they're feeling. When you fuse your identity with your emotions, you make your emotions true. If I am anxious, then anxiety is a fact about who you are. It's your nature. It's unchangeable. And if that's true, then of course you can't do the thing that makes you anxious. You are an anxious person, and anxious people can't do that. You've locked yourself into your emotional state by making it part of your identity. But when you separate identity from emotion, you free yourself. I am experiencing anxiety means anxiety is just a temporary state. It's happening to you right now, but it's not who you are. And if it's not who you are, then you're not limited by it. You're a capable person who happens to be feeling anxious at the moment. And capable people can do difficult things even when they're feeling anxious. The anxiety becomes irrelevant to your capabilities. This separation requires vigilant self-talk. You need to catch yourself when you say things like, I am sad, or I am angry, or I am tired, and reframe them. I am feeling sad. I am experiencing anger. I am noticing tiredness. It feels awkward at first. It feels like you're being overly technical or distancing yourself from your humanity. But you're not. You're accurately describing reality. You are not the temporary emotion. You're the constant experiencer of changing emotions. This practice also helps you recognize the temporary nature of emotions. When you say, I am angry, anger feels permanent. It feels like a state you're stuck in. But when you say, I am experiencing anger, you're acknowledging that this is a passing state. Anger came, and like all emotions, it will go. This recognition makes it easier to not act on the emotion. Because why would you make a permanent decision based on a temporary feeling? The more you practice the separation, the more you realize how fluid and changeable your emotions actually are. You could be frustrated one moment and calm the next, anxious in the morning and confident in the afternoon, exhausted at 3 p.m. and energized at 4 p.m. after a short walk. If your identity was fused with these emotions, you'd be a different person every few hours. But you're not. You're the same person experiencing different emotional states. This realization is liberating. It means you don't have to wait for the right emotional state to take action. You don't have to wait to feel motivated, to do motivated behavior. You don't have to wait to feel confident, to do confident action. You can experience low motivation or high anxiety and still execute, because those feelings don't define your capabilities. They're just passing weather. You also need to separate your identity from your thoughts. You are not your thoughts any more than you are your emotions. Thoughts like, I can't do this, or I'm not good enough, or this is too hard, are not facts about who you are. They're just thoughts passing through your mind. And you can notice them without believing them or acting on them. Practice observing your thoughts and emotions like you'd observe clouds passing through the sky. There's an anxious thought. There's a feeling of resistance. There's a doubt about my abilities. You notice them. You name them. But you don't become them. You don't let them define you. You remain the sky, constant and unchanging, while the clouds of thoughts and emotions drift through. This observer position is your true self, not the temporary emotions, not the passing thoughts, but the awareness that experiences all of these things without being any of them. This is the you that can feel everything and execute anyway, because this you is not controlled by feelings. This you makes decisions based on values and goals, then observes the feelings that arise without letting them dictate behavior. Start practicing the separation today. Pay attention to your self-talk. When you catch yourself saying, I am emotion, reframe it to I am experiencing emotion. When you notice a thought that seems to define you, recognize it as just a thought, not a truth. Build the habit of observation without identification. This is how you reclaim power from your emotional system. The more you separate your identity from your emotions, the more freedom you have. You're no longer trapped by how you feel in any given moment. You're no longer waiting for the right emotional state to pursue your goals. You're someone who feels what they feel and does what they decided to do regardless. This is the foundation of consistent execution. This is what it means to feel nothing. Not that emotions don't arise, but that they don't define you and execute everything. Chapter 6. Master the psychological reframe. You're suffering not from your circumstances, but from how you're interpreting your circumstances. The same situation that devastates one person barely registers to another. The same setback that makes one person quit makes another person more determined. The difference is not in what happens, but in the frame they put around what happens. And you have complete control over your frame. You just don't realize you're choosing it. Every emotion you feel is being generated by your interpretation of events, not by the events themselves. You don't feel anxious because a situation is objectively scary. You feel anxious because you interpret the situation as threatening to something you value. You don't feel frustrated because a task is objectively annoying. You feel frustrated because you've interpreted the difficulty as unfair or unnecessary. Change the interpretation, and you change the emotion. This is not toxic positivity. This is not pretending that bad things are good. This is recognizing that the same event can be framed in multiple ways, and each frame generates different emotions and different action possibilities. Losing your job could be framed as, I'm a failure, my life is ruined. Or it could be framed as, I've been freed from a situation that wasn't serving me and now I have space to find something better. Same event, completely different emotional experience and behavioral response. The frame you choose determines whether you execute or give up. If you frame a difficult project as, this is too hard and I'm going to fail, you feel overwhelmed and you quit. If you frame the same project as, this is challenging and I'm going to learn and grow, you feel engaged and you persist. The project didn't change. Your frame changed, and that frame determined your emotional state and your behavior. Highly successful people are masters of psychological reframing. They take events that most people would frame as disasters and reframe them as opportunities. They take feedback that most people would frame as crushing criticism and reframe it as valuable information. They take setbacks that most people would frame as endings and reframe them as redirections. They're not delusional. They're strategic about which interpretation they choose to believe. You need to develop this skill deliberately. Start by recognizing that your current frame is just one possible interpretation, not objective reality. When something happens and you feel a strong negative emotion, pause and ask yourself, how am I interpreting this event? What meaning am I making of it? Usually, you'll find you're making the worst possible interpretation without even realizing it. Then ask, what are other ways I could interpret this that would be equally valid but more useful? Not what's the most positive spin I can put on this, but what's another legitimate interpretation that serves me better? If you didn't get the job, instead of I'm not good enough, try that role wasn't the right fit and a better opportunity is still coming. Both could be true, but one frame generates shame and retreat. The other generates motivation and continued effort. If someone gives you harsh feedback, instead of they hate me and my work is terrible, try they see potential in me and care enough to push me to improve. If a project is taking longer than expected, instead of I'm failing and should give up, Try, I'm learning what's actually required and getting better with each iteration. These reframes don't deny reality. They just choose a more empowering interpretation of that reality. Practice reframing in real time. When you notice yourself feeling a negative emotion, stop and identify your current frame. Write it down if you need to. I'm framing this as underscore, 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 underscore. Then deliberately generate alternative frames. I could also frame this as underscore, 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 underscore. Pick the frame that's both honest and useful. Then consciously adopt that frame. Tell yourself, I'm choosing to see this as underscore, 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 underscore. This will feel artificial at first. It will feel like you're lying to yourself or engaging in mental gymnastics. But you're not. You're recognizing that your initial frame was also chosen, just automatically and unconsciously. You're simply choosing more deliberately. You're taking control of the meaning-making process instead of letting it run on autopilot. One powerful reframe is to view every difficult emotion as information rather than problem. Instead of, I feel anxious and that's bad, reframe to, I feel anxious and that's telling me this matters to me, which means I should do it. Instead of, I feel frustrated and I want to quit, reframe to, I feel frustrated, which means I'm at the edge of my current capabilities, which means I'm about to grow. Another powerful reframe is to view obstacles as necessary rather than unfair. Instead of, why is this so hard, reframe to, of course this is hard. If it were easy, everyone would do it and it wouldn't be valuable. The difficulty is what makes it worth doing. This reframe transforms resistance into acceptance. You stop fighting reality and start working with it. You can also reframe your relationship with effort itself. Instead of seeing effort as a sign that you're not good enough, reframe it as a sign that you're growing. This is hard doesn't mean I should quit. It means I'm getting stronger. This reframe makes you seek challenges instead of avoiding them, because challenges are no longer threats to your adequacy. They're opportunities for development. The key is to practice this consistently until it becomes automatic. Every time you feel a negative emotion, use it as a trigger to check your frame. Don't just accept the first interpretation your brain generates. Generate alternatives and choose strategically. Over time, you'll start doing this unconsciously. Your default frames will shift from disempowering to empowering. This is not about never feeling negative emotions. It's about not letting those emotions control you through faulty interpretations. It's about recognizing that you have agency over the meaning you make from events. And that agency is what allows you to feel difficult emotions without being paralyzed by them, to experience setbacks without being defeated by them, to encounter obstacles without being stopped by them. Master the reframe. Control the interpretation. Choose the frame that serves your execution rather than accepting the frame your fear provides. This is how you train your mind to feel nothing, because feelings lose their controlling power when you can reframe their triggers and execute everything, because every situation becomes an opportunity through the right frame. Chapter 7. Build systems that remove emotional dependency. You're relying on willpower and motivation to overcome your feelings, and that's why you're failing. Willpower is a limited resource that gets depleted throughout the day. Motivation is a fleeting state that comes and goes based on factors you can't control. If your ability to execute depends on having willpower and motivation when you need them, you're going to fail most of the time. You need to build systems that make execution independent of your emotional state. A system is a set of external structures that produce the desired behavior regardless of how you feel. It's an environment designed to make the right action easier than the wrong action. It's a process that removes decision points where feelings could interfere. It's a setup that assumes you'll feel resistance and works anyway. Systems are what allow you to execute mechanically without needing to overcome your emotions every single time. Think about the areas where you already execute consistently without emotional struggle. You probably brush your teeth every day without debating whether you feel like it. Why? Because you have a system. Your toothbrush is visible in your bathroom. It's part of your morning routine. The cost of not doing it, bad breath, tooth decay, is clear and immediate. The action itself is quick and low effort. This system makes the behavior automatic. Your feelings about brushing are irrelevant. You need to create similar systems for the important behaviors you currently rely on willpower to execute. If you want to work out consistently, don't rely on feeling motivated. Build a system. Put your workout clothes by your bed so you see them when you wake up. Schedule your workouts at the same time every day so they become routine. Prepare your gym bag the night before. Make a workout plan so you don't have to think about what to do. Remove the friction and decision points that give your resistance space to talk you out of it. If you want to eat healthy, don't rely on willpower at mealtime when you're hungry and stressed. Build a system. Meal prep on Sundays so healthy food is ready to eat. Don't keep junk food in your house. So the easy option is the healthy option. Make a standard meal plan so you don't have to decide what to eat when you're vulnerable. The system makes healthy eating the path of least resistance. If you want to work on your important projects consistently, don't rely on inspiration. Build a system. Block specific time in your calendar for deep work. Set up your workspace so you can start immediately without setup time. Turn off notifications before you start. Have a startup ritual that signals to your brain it's work time. The system removes the need to overcome resistance every time you sit down to work. The key to effective systems is that they work with your psychology instead of fighting it. You know you'll feel resistant, so you design the environment to make the resistant choice harder than the desired choice. You know you'll have low willpower at certain times, so you make the important decisions when your willpower is high. You know you'll be tempted to negotiate with yourself, so you remove the points where negotiation is possible. One powerful system is implementation intentions. Specific if then plans that remove decision-making in the moment. Instead of I'll work out when I can, you create if it's 6 a.m. on a weekday, then I'm in my workout clothes doing my warm-up. Instead of I'll work on my project when inspired, you create if it's 7 p.m. on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, then I'm at my desk with my project file open. The if-then format removes deliberation and makes the behavior automatic. Another powerful system is habit stacking, attaching new behaviors to existing habits so they piggyback on established routines. After I pour my coffee, I meditate for 5 minutes. After I finish dinner, I review my goals for tomorrow. After I brush my teeth at night, I prepare my workout clothes. The existing habit serves as a trigger for the new behavior, making it easier to remember and execute. You also need to design your physical environment to support your systems. If you want to read more, put books everywhere and hide your phone. If you want to drink more water, put water bottles in every room. If you want to avoid distractions while working, work in a space with no TV and no comfortable couch. Your environment should make the desired behavior obvious and easy, and the undesired behavior hidden and difficult. Social systems are also powerful. Tell people about your commitments. So, social pressure reinforces them. Find accountability partners who will check on your follow-through. Join groups where the behavior you want is normal. Use social forces to support your execution instead of fighting them alone with willpower. Technology can be part of your systems too. Set reminders for your important tasks. Use apps that block distracting websites during work hours. Automate financial decisions like saving and investing so they happen without your active involvement. Track your behaviors so you can see your consistency. Make technology work for you instead of against you. The goal is to create a life where the systems are doing most of the work, and willpower is only needed for occasional exceptions, where your default behaviors align with your goals because you've designed your environment and routines that way, where you don't have to overcome your feelings to execute because the execution happens independently of your feelings. This requires upfront effort. You have to think through your systems, set them up, and maintain them. But this one-time investment pays dividends forever. Every day that your system works is a day you executed without emotional struggle. Every week of consistency is building momentum that makes future execution easier. Every month of systematic behavior is creating the results you want without the exhausting battle against your feelings. Stop relying on willpower and motivation. Start building systems. Design your environment. Create implementation intentions. Stack habits. Remove friction from desired behaviors and add friction to undesired behaviors. Make execution automatic. This is how you feel whatever you feel and still do what you decided to do. This is how you remove emotional dependency from your most important actions. Chapter 8. Accept discomfort as the price of growth. You keep trying to find a way to achieve your goals that doesn't feel uncomfortable. You're searching for the method that feels good, the path that's easy, the approach that doesn't require you to feel anything difficult. And that search is what's keeping you stuck. Because there's no path to meaningful achievement that doesn't go through sustained discomfort. Discomfort is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's proof you're doing something right. Every goal worth achieving requires you to operate at the edge of your current capabilities. And at that edge, you will always feel uncomfortable, incompetent, uncertain, overwhelmed. If you're comfortable, you're not at your edge. You're doing things you already know how to do. And doing what you already know how to do produces the results you already have. If you want different results, you have to get comfortable with prolonged discomfort. The problem is you've been taught that discomfort is a signal to stop. That if something feels hard or awkward or frustrating, you're not in flow, and you should find something that feels better. But this is a lie that keeps people mediocre. Flow is great when it happens, but waiting for flow before you work is like waiting for motivation before you exercise. It's letting your feelings dictate your actions, and feelings will always choose comfort over growth. You need to redefine your relationship with discomfort. Instead of seeing it as a problem to be eliminated, see it as information that you're growing. Instead of using it as a reason to quit, use it as confirmation that you're on the right path. Instead of trying to avoid it, deliberately seek it out, because you know that's where transformation happens. This mindset shift turns discomfort from an enemy into an ally. Think about physical exercise. The burn in your muscles is uncomfortable, but that burn is the signal that you're creating microscopic tears in the muscle fiber that will heal stronger. If you stop when you feel the burn, you don't get stronger. You have to work through the burn. The discomfort is not optional. It's the mechanism of growth. The same principle applies to every area of development. When you're learning a new skill, the feeling of incompetence is uncomfortable, but that incompetence is necessary. You can't become competent without first being incompetent. If you quit when you feel stupid or clumsy or slow, you never progress. You have to accept that learning feels bad before it feels good. The awkward stage is not a detour. It's the path. When you're building a business or pursuing an ambitious project, the uncertainty is uncomfortable. You don't know if it will work. You don't have all the answers. You're figuring it out as you go. But this uncertainty is inherent to anything new. If the path were certain, it wouldn't be creating something new. It would be following a map that someone else drew. Accept the uncertainty. Work within it. Let it be uncomfortable without letting it stop you. When you're developing emotional resilience, feeling your feelings fully is uncomfortable. It's easier to numb them or distract from them, but you can't build emotional strength by avoiding emotions. You have to feel them completely, sit with them, and continue functioning despite them. The discomfort feeling is what builds your capacity to feel without being controlled. The highly successful people you admire are not comfortable most of the time. They're operating in sustained discomfort as a normal state. They're constantly pushing edges, taking risks, facing fears, handling criticism, dealing with setbacks. The difference is they've accepted this discomfort as the price of their goals. They're not trying to eliminate it. They're not waiting for it to feel better. They're working through it, because that's what the goal requires. You need to make the same acceptance. Look at your most important goals and get honest about the discomforts they will require. Physical goals require the discomfort of exertion and discipline. Financial goals require the discomfort of delayed gratification and risk. Relationship goals require the discomfort of vulnerability and conflict. Creative goals require the discomfort of criticism and rejection. Career goals require the discomfort of challenge and responsibility. Write these discomforts down. Name them specifically. To achieve X, I will have to consistently feel Y. For example, to build my business, I will have to consistently feel uncertainty, fear of failure, and rejection. This is your acceptance contract. You're acknowledging up front that these feelings are part of the package. You're not going to be surprised by them or use them as reasons to quit. You've accepted them as the price of admission. Then, when those discomforts arise, you recognize them as expected rather than as signs that something's wrong. Oh, I'm feeling rejected. Of course I am. I knew building this business would involve feeling rejection regularly. This is what I signed up for. This recognition prevents a discomfort from derailing you. It's just the expected price, not a crisis. You also need to start measuring your tolerance for discomfort as a key metric. Don't just track your output or your results. Track how much discomfort you're willing to sit in without quitting. How long can you work on something frustrating before you give up? How many rejections can you handle before you stop trying? How much uncertainty can you tolerate before you abandon the goal? These numbers are your real limiting factors, and they can be improved through deliberate practice. Challenge yourself to gradually increase your tolerance. If you currently quit after 10 minutes of frustration, try to make it 15 next time. If you currently give up after 3 rejections, go for 5. If you currently can only handle 2 days of uncertainty before you need reassurance, stretch it to 3. Each time you stay in the discomfort longer than before, you're expanding your capacity. This doesn't mean seeking unnecessary suffering. This means accepting the necessary suffering that comes with growth and ambition. This means stop running from the discomfort that's trying to teach you something. This means recognizing that the feeling of discomfort is often your signal that you're exactly where you need to be. The path to your goals is not through finding a comfortable way. The path is through accepting discomfort and moving forward anyway. Through letting discomfort be present without letting it control your actions. Through training yourself to function at full capacity while feeling uncomfortable. This is what feel nothing and execute everything means. Not that you don't feel discomfort, but that discomfort doesn't stop your execution. Accept discomfort. Stop trying to eliminate it. Stop using it as a reason to quit. Let it be the price you willingly pay for the goals that matter to you. This acceptance is what separates people who achieve their goals from people who just wish for them. Stop wishing for comfort. Start accepting discomfort. Execute anyway. The liberation of emotional independence. You've just been given a complete framework for training your mind to feel nothing and execute everything. And now you're standing at the most important choice point. Will you go back to being controlled by your feelings, or will you start building the emotional independence that makes consistent execution possible? Everything I've shown you works. Treating feelings as information instead of instructions. Widening the gap between feeling and action. Building emotional calluses through repeated exposure. Separating your identity from your emotional states. Mastering psychological reframes. Building systems that remove emotional dependency. Accepting discomfort as the price of growth. These are not theories. These are practices that have been proven by everyone who's ever achieved anything significant. But here's what you need to understand. Knowing this information changes nothing. What changes everything is applying it consistently until these practices become your default way of operating. Until you automatically notice feelings without acting on them. Until you reflexively widen the gap before responding. Until discomfort feels normal instead of like an emergency. Until your systems run your life instead of your emotions running your life. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. You spent years being controlled by your feelings. Years of immediately acting on every emotion. Years of letting your mood determine your behavior. Years of avoiding discomfort. Breaking these patterns requires sustained effort. You're going to feel like you're fighting yourself at first. Because in a way, you are. You're training a new you to override the old you. Here's what I want you to do in the next 24 hours. Pick one specific feeling that regularly controls your behavior and prevents execution. Maybe it's the I don't feel like it that stops you from working out. Maybe it's the anxiety that stops you from making important calls. Maybe it's the frustration that makes you quit projects halfway through. Whatever it is, name it clearly. Then create a plan for the next time that feeling arises. Not a plan to eliminate the feeling, but a plan to execute despite it. Write it down. When I feel emotion, I will acknowledge it by saying statement, and then I will do action anyway. For example, when I feel like skipping my workout, I will say, I notice the resistance and I'm going anyway, and then I will put on my workout clothes and leave the house within 5 minutes. Execute that plan tomorrow, and the day after, and every day for the next 30 days. Track your successes. Every time you feel the emotion and execute anyway, mark it down. You're building evidence that you can separate feeling from action, that you're not controlled by your emotional weather, that you're someone who does what they decided to do regardless of how they feel about it. After 30 days, pick another emotion to work with. Keep expanding your emotional independence. Keep building your capacity to feel without being controlled. Keep proving to yourself that you're capable of mechanical execution regardless of your internal state. This is the work. This is how you become someone who achieves their goals instead of someone who just talks about them. Now, if this video has shown you something you need to understand, if it's revealed why you've been stuck in a cycle of good intentions and poor follow-through, then I need you to make a commitment right now. Subscribe to this channel. But understand what you're actually doing. You're not subscribing to feel good or to collect information. You're subscribing because you're making a decision about who you're going to become. You're declaring that you're done being controlled by your feelings, that you're ready to build the emotional independence that makes consistent execution possible, that you understand feelings are not instructions, and you're committed to proving it through your actions. This channel exists for people who are serious about transformation, people who understand that motivation is useless without systems, that feelings are real but don't determine capability, that discomfort is the price of growth, not a reason to quit. Every video is designed to challenge your current operating system and give you frameworks that actually work if you apply them. Most people won't subscribe. They'll watch this video, feel temporarily inspired, and then go right back to letting their feelings control their lives. They'll wait to feel motivated before they take action. They'll use their emotions as excuses for not executing. They'll keep wondering why they can't follow through on their goals while refusing to build the emotional independence that follow-through requires. Don't be like most people. You didn't watch this far because you want to stay the same. You watched this far because you recognize that something needs to change, that you can't keep operating the way you've been and expect different results, that your feelings have been running your life for too long and it's time to take back control. When you subscribe, turn on notifications, not so you can passively consume more content, but so you get reminded of these principles when you need them most. When you're feeling resistant and looking for permission to quit. When you're feeling anxious and looking for permission to avoid. When you're feeling unmotivated and looking for permission to wait. Let each video be a reminder that your feelings don't give you permission. You give yourself permission by executing your decisions regardless of your feelings. The subscription button is your first test. Right now, you probably don't feel like subscribing. Maybe you're telling yourself you'll do it later. Maybe you're thinking you need to see more videos first. Maybe you're hesitant for reasons you can't quite name. Notice those feelings, acknowledge them, and then subscribe anyway. Let this be your first act of feeling, without being controlled, of executing regardless of emotional state. I'll see you in the next video. And when I do, I want you to be able to tell yourself that you executed despite your feelings, that you acknowledge your resistance and moved forward anyway, that you took action not because you felt like it, but because you decided to, because that's what people who achieve their goals do. They execute regardless of how they feel. They've trained their minds to feel nothing, to feel fully without being controlled, and execute everything. You are capable of this transformation. You are capable of emotional independence. You are capable of consistent execution regardless of your mood. But capability without action is just potential. And potential without follow-through is just another way to stay stuck. So take action now. Subscribe as your first step. Then execute your plan tomorrow. Then keep executing day after day until execution becomes your default regardless of what you feel. The life you want is not waiting for you to feel ready. It's waiting for you to execute regardless of feeling ready. The goals you have are not waiting for you to feel motivated. They're waiting for you to show up consistently, whether motivation is present or not. The person you want to become doesn't wait for the right emotional state. They execute in any emotional state because they've trained themselves to separate feeling from action. Stop waiting to feel differently. Start executing regardless of how you feel. Stop being controlled by your emotional weather. Start being the person who navigates any weather and arrives at their destination anyway. This is your path. This is your training. This is how you transform from someone who is controlled by feelings to someone who feels everything and executes anyway. Close this video. Subscribe if you haven't. Then go execute something you've been avoiding because of how it makes you feel. Do it badly if you have to. Do it scared if you must. Do it tired, anxious, unmotivated, uncertain. Just do it. Because the doing is what matters. The feeling is irrelevant. Train your mind. Feel nothing. Execute everything. Your future is waiting.